Welcome to the 17th episode of the Influential Wellnesspreneur podcast. My name is Sebastian Hilbert and I'm the Wellnesspreneur expert. I help wellness business owners and therapists to get themselves out there and reach their ideal client with an effective online presence. On this journey, I meet some incredible people, and one of them is Adam Franklin, author of Web Marketing That Works and social media speaker. Hi Adam, how are you?
Hello Sebastian, I'm very well, thank you mate. I'm excited to be talking with you this evening.
Awesome. You just were holding up for your Web Marketing That Works book. For all those who are listening to the podcast and can't see this right now, it's a fantastic book. And that's actually one of the first things I kind of came across in terms of with Adam. And it's pretty cool to have him on the podcast here today. And let me quickly tell everyone out there who you are a little bit more. Adam is an international social media speaker and marketing manager of Blue Wire Media, the web marketing firm he co-founded in 2005 with his schoolmate Toby Jenkins. Adam is a social media commentator on 2UE and writes for two of the top 25 business blogs in Australia. One of them is Startup Smart and Blue Wire Media. Plus, he lives and breathes Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Google+, and email marketing. And I'm looking forward to hear more about that today. Adam co-created a web search planning template, which I recommend to anyone to jump on his website. It's in the show and the podcast show notes, maybe after the podcast, but it's a really great tool to just get your head around what to do online and how to plan it all out. He also co-wrote the ebook Web Strategy Secrets, which have been downloaded by thousands of people worldwide. Adam has been featured on Smart Company's Hot 30 Under 30 and the Dynamic Business 2010 Young Guns list of young entrepreneurs, as well as in the latest edition of the book, The New Rules of Marketing and PR. Wow. I would say for everyone who thinks now there's a 60-year-old looking at me and in the camera, no, he's still very young, but has achieved it all in his very early years. So it's so cool to have you here, Adam. And what I always want to know right away is like, to get there, where did it start, and what's your story behind this person you basically created, I always say?
Yeah, Sebastian, it's quite a long journey actually. It started back in 2005, and so that's 13 years ago. And I actually started the business with my very good friend, Toby Jenkins, and we've actually been mates since grade 1 in 1986. So we've been friends for our whole lives since grade 1. And whilst it's been a very interesting friendship, the business part of this adventure started in 2005 when we were both looking to start a business. We weren't technical people, and we saw this thing called the internet, and it had been around for a little while, even though it feels like a long time ago now. And we thought there's got to be some opportunity here. People need websites. And we basically went about knocking on doors in Brisbane, asking business owners if they needed a website. And it was a very hot journey and full of lots of rejection, and our sales and marketing skills have improved quite a bit since those early days of knocking on doors. But that's how it started, and that was before social media existed. It was before a lot of the technologies that we're used to today that have made things so much easier, like the Zoom call, being able to connect on Facebook or LinkedIn and all of that. So it was before a lot of those times. But what that meant, Sebastian, is that it gave us front row seats as the world changed. And so as Twitter came along and Facebook came along, and all these tools that we use these days, we could be one of the early adopters. We could test it out, and we could see how not only we could use it, but our clients could use it. And then we could then teach that to people as well. So that's kind of the evolution. We started as a web design agency. Even though we were non-technical, we hired the skills to do the development work. And these days it's evolved a lot. We wrote the book 3 or 4 years ago. We share everything we know in the book. And it's allowed us to evolve into a education company. So we do public speaking, we do consulting, we do workshops and online courses. And it's a very different business model to being an agency, but I think it's more rewarding for Toby and myself, and we can impact a lot more people following this business model. And it really allows us a lot more freedom and flexibility, to be honest, as well.
Yeah, I can imagine. Sounds absolutely incredible, and really, you two always have been two of my role models and on my journey, because it's quite similar. We also started with websites, and then now hired the technical skills because we didn't have them after trying it ourselves. Yeah, it's pretty cool what you have done there. You quite fascinating what you just said. For you, social media in general just kind of came along on the way, whereas for us it was kind of always there. What were some challenges, or do you remember what happened at that time when, let's say, Facebook or LinkedIn came in? Like, what kind of things did you have to deal with back then?
Well, it was interesting because I heard about Facebook for a few months. People were getting onto this social network, and I guess prior to that, we'd had MySpace, and it kind of took off for a bit, but then it kind of everyone lost interest in it. And I thought, well, is Facebook going to be worth getting onto? So I was a bit hesitant. I didn't rush onto it, but more and more people kept talking about it. More and more people kept inviting me to join it. So eventually, I bit the bullet and I joined. And I thought, wow, this is incredible. Here's this friend from primary school I'd not seen in 15 years. And here's this other person that I met at a party this time. And all of a sudden, Facebook's kind of connecting me with all these different people that I felt I'd lost contact with. Now, not always a good thing to have everybody in your life reconnected with to you, but it was fascinating. And I thought, well, I really like networking and having a personal relationship with a lot of people. So I found it very, very interesting that technology could so accurately represent and reflect what happened in real life. So for me, that was the first time that I was realizing that it wasn't just these random friends you made on MySpace, which used to be the way. You'd have 100 friends, but they weren't really friends. They were just, pen friends or cyber friends or whatever you'd want to call it. But Facebook nailed it, because all of a sudden they were genuine friends and people that you wanted to be in touch with. So for me, that was the fascinating part at the start. And that kind of just opened up the opportunities of, well, how can businesses be using this platform in order to be marketing themselves and winning new business and doing it in a way that sat comfortably with them, rather than, back in those days, a whole lot of the online marketing world was all that high pressure, lots of hype, lots of red pen, yellow highlighter, high pressure sales. And that didn't sit well with me. It seemed really slimy and manipulative and everything else. So what I found with these real personal connections, particularly through Facebook, it allowed people to actually develop a bit of a relationship. It allowed people to get to know, like, and trust you. And it meant that you didn't have to force the sale onto people straight away, whereas that was previously the mentality with online marketing. And so I think it really made the web a lot more social, definitely, and a lot more human as well. So there's some of the opportunities and challenges that I've found along the way there, Sebastian.
Very, very interesting. And I think this is, for me, very interesting, because I always say we have to think about really what social media is at its core really about. And it is creating genuine relationships and finding those real people. And you just said that was actually the initial interest and differentiation of Facebook, really, what made them successful. And I think it's we really have to remember that when it comes to our business or trying to grow our business.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was just interesting reflecting on that story then, how long ago it was, and how interesting a period of time it was, pre-Facebook and pre-social media. Sort of puts you in the old category. But But it's true, and it's really interesting. And I also had a thought before, Sebastian. Do you remember how you first came across Blue Wire and the stuff that Toby and I have done?
I was thinking about that just before earlier today, but I just couldn't quite remember. It must have been, I think we were researching like who was doing this inbound marketing. I remember back then when we started was always this big thing, and HubSpot was really was back then our go-to point. And somewhere along those lines, we found your web strategy template and also funnel, the web funnel. And then from there, we found your book. And from there, we found more out about you. And yeah, well, the typical way of how you want it to happen for any business, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I always like to ask people how they first found out about us and if they can even remember. And it's very common for people to say exactly what you've said, Sebastian. They think it was they were doing some research on something and they stumbled across one of our marketing templates, and then they found another template or something like that. And according to my records, I'm just having a look at them now, it was probably back in 2015 that my records show anyway, that you got onto our mailing list because you downloaded a couple of templates as well. So it's been 3 years now. This was early 2015. So it's fascinating, and we'll talk more about it on the call today, but the ability for us now to be able to publish information for free and for people all over the world to find it and access it and, meet each other and do these interviews and everything else. It's just such an exciting time to be alive. And we're in the same country, but oftentimes it's people from overseas, as you'll find with the podcast, when you look at your stats as to who's downloaded the episodes and who's listening.
I tell you,
people from all over the world.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
When we downloaded your template, Adam, that was when we lived in Switzerland, actually, or Switzerland or Germany it was. So we actually did download it from the other side of the world back then. We just now back here.
There you go.
Yeah, it is fascinating. You were saying before that, kind of everyone went to social media, and social media is the go-to point, and you realized that you had to be on social media. What's your take on that now compared to back then? It's still the same opinion, but maybe the same opinion of different kind of approaches, or where we stand now?
Look, I've always had very strong thoughts on social media. It's very, very powerful, but it's not the be all and end all. You still need that home base. You still need that asset that you own as a entrepreneur or business owner or wellness professional. You need to be in control of what you're doing. So I've always said that you need a website and you need an email list, because they're two things that you control, and you own that. You'll have seen a lot of stories and maybe experienced it with your own clients or your own listeners, that people that are heavily dependent on Facebook are really at Facebook's mercy, because if they change the algorithm, they can dramatically reduce your reach to the people that have actually opted in to want to hear from your company. And companies have gone out of business because they've been entirely dependent on Facebook. And same goes for LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram and everything else. So I've always said it's a lovely way to be able to meet people, to network, to develop relationships, to share content. But at the end of the day, it's just a stepping stone to nurturing people back to your home base, to your website, to your email list. And yes, they work brilliantly in tandem. Like if you can email people and they can see you on Facebook and they can see you on LinkedIn, super, super powerful. But I just advise all my clients and students just to be not totally dependent on those platforms. It's much more sensible to focus on the stuff that you own and that you can control. So yeah, I've always felt that from the start of, back in the early blog articles that I wrote, it was always about get people onto your email list, develop that relationship, and then Facebook's a nice to have thing to amplify the trust.
Yeah, very good. I always say, when you have this funnel that we often talk about, or these little products that you create for your business and have as assets and things that you own and control. And I think you put that really well there, that you need to have things in your business that you control, especially when it comes to intellectual property and what you put online. And I always say, when you have kind of your customer journey built out, like with you guys, you have your web strategy template, then you have a book, and then the next thing may be a speaking gig of you guys, and then the big thing will then be a one-on-one coaching with you or Toby or the both of you, whatever it is. But I always say, people have different needs and different times to go through this journey. And social media is a beautiful thing to always stay in front of mind until they're ready for the next step.
Absolutely. It's nice to, once you have that connection with somebody, it's, as a marketer and a business owner, I feel it's our responsibility to lay out the pathway and put the baby steps in place, but then allow people to take those steps at a pace that they're comfortable with. So you don't want to slow people down if they're super keen to just start working with you today. But by the same token, you don't want to be pushy and force people along that pathway. So if you lay out all the steps and you give people at the end of each phase, you could sort of say, well, the next step would be to read the blog article or look at the show notes, or then download a template and then open my next email and then watch the video. And before you know it, people can choose to go and get to know you and like you and hopefully trust you at a pace that they're comfortable with. And then if you're constantly sort of not making those steps too big a jump, then the right types of people will naturally gravitate towards doing business with you or to being an active part of your community. So it is really cool. I love social media for that.
Definitely. Very good. So when it comes to these steps, or laying these steps, what would be some things that you would recommend where to start? Like if I don't have them yet, or often I see people have them, but I haven't laid them out properly, or there is maybe a couple of steps missing in between. So if you, let's say, have a new client, this is probably one of the things that you do. Like what's something you would recommend where to start for someone to start?
Look, one of the things that we found really interesting is the fact that each of us, whatever type of wellness professional you might be, or business owner, we all have this IP and this knowledge and expertise in our head. It's often already in documents that we share with our prospects in initial consultations. And it's often not a matter of creating it. Often it's a matter of uncovering what it is, because it already exists. And one of the things that I encourage people to think of is think about that first appointment you might have with a patient or someone that's comes into your clinic or your practice. And there's often stuff that you will say to them, or that you'll show them, or that you'll give them that is very helpful to them. It helps them on their wellness journey, but it also helps them get to know, like, and trust you in that first place. And that's great because you're sharing it with these people and they're getting to know you, but it's also means that only the people that see you face to face get to benefit from it. And so if you can then uncover what that is, and it could be lots of different things, but typically it's one or two key things that you start off with. If you can uncover that and then share that with the world via the internet, then so many more people can actually discover what it is that you do and how you help them. And because it's on the internet, it scales. It's not taking up any more of your time to share a document or something like you would with a patient. And so many more people can discover you, and so many more people can be attracted into your business. So that's the first place to start. It's as simple as uncovering that, what I would call flagship content or a lead magnet. It's something that is ideally digital, so you don't have to actually physically mail anything. It's so valuable that people would pay you for it if you ask them. And so that's a good indicator to see if it's valuable enough. If as an acupuncturist or naturopath or whatever else, if it feels like you're giving away too much and it kind of hurts you a little bit, that's a great sign that you're gift, your free giveaway, is actually going to be valuable enough for people to want to download it, and valuable enough for them to want to share it and use it. So that's the first place to start. Uncover what that is, share that with the world, and that everything else can flow on from there.
Very good. Yeah. And I the more I hear you and listen to you, the more I remember what you guys teach in the book, and how much that influenced me on my whole journey. So it's fabulous to actually to hear that coming out of live out of your mouth. It's it's quite special actually. It's really cool. I know you do a lot of speaking. So I know we're talking about social media, staying in front of mind. We just talked about uncovering the assets to lay them out online. Now, I would say speaking is probably to even share this more, or does it fit in somewhere else? How does it fit in for you, speaking to grow your business?
Look, I have found speaking to be very beneficial. It's not for everybody. So if it's not something that people want to do or naturally gravitate to doing, I would say it's probably not worth the effort, because it does take quite a bit of practice. It can be a long sort of painful journey to get to a point where one, you get invited to speak, or two, you get paid to speak. So it's not easy, but it is incredibly fun and enjoyable. So it fits in sort of like this. I mean, we found that the majority of our paying students or our clients, they've read something that we've written, they've seen us, and they've seen us somewhere. So whether it's on a video or on stage, they have read something that we've written, and they've seen us, and they've heard about us from somebody else. So someone else has mentioned us in a blog article or a news article or something. They've seen us, and they've read something that we've written. So being on stage, I think, is good in that whole authority and credibility piece, because if they're seeing you on stage, you're automatically positioned as somebody who is trustworthy and who is knowledgeable. And so anybody can just get up and do a video and post it to the internet, but not everybody can get on a stage and do some speech. So I think it just helps position your message and yourself a little bit higher as an authority, which then helps in that trust building process. And at the end of the day, you get to speak to a whole bunch of people at the same time, so they can see you, they can learn from you. And if they like you, then it's important, just like we do with our online marketing, to have that little baby step, that call to action to do the next thing with you. So typically at the end of my presentations, I'll just say, look, if you want to get your hands on these templates that I've talked about, I might have talked them through one or two of them. I'll say, if you want the whole lot, look, just send me an email and I'm going to send them off to you for free. And so what that means is that a whole bunch of people take out their phone, they send me an email, and I can continue that conversation with them online. Whereas a lot of people that do speaking kind of just do it as a standalone thing, and they just hope that people remember them, remember their message, remember to get in touch, which obviously is much less likely to happen. Whereas if you have that baby step and you say, look, here's the next step. If you've liked what I've spoken about, send me an email, just type templates in the subject line, then you've got that connection. So again, you can go from email then to the next step and the next step. So there's some of the things that I've learned from speaking, and how that fits into the whole marketing funnel as well. It's a lot more powerful when you're face to face with people in the flesh, in the room. And it's a really good way to amplify that trust.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. You said you asked them to send you an email. Now, I've seen pictures of you being in front of quite a few people. So that sounds like a lot of work.
Well, that's where you have virtual assistants to help as well. What I typically do, yeah, I mean, some of the audiences might be quite big. There's often, maybe you might get between 10 and 50% of people that are interested in what you've got to email them. So typically at the end of a presentation, you sort of be able to tell how well you did as well by how many emails you've received from people. What I'll typically do, I like the personal touch. So mean, the fact that someone's spent an hour in the room listening to you, then I feel that they're totally deserving of, you taking a couple of minutes to reply to them individually and personally. So after the talk, I'll, if someone else comes on after me, I'll just be on my phone. I'll reply to everybody. I'll send them what I've promised. And it might take an hour, it might take 45 minutes or so. But then what I'll do then, because that's a personal touch, which I like, what I'll do then is I'll actually get my virtual assistant just to log into my email and just create a spreadsheet of all the people that have typed templates or what have you in the subject in the subject of the email. She will then populate a spreadsheet, and then those that have actually said yes, they want to get my newsletter, and then there's people that say no, I don't want to get your newsletter. Then they'll be separated in the spreadsheet, and I'll then upload the people that have opted in. I'll upload them into my Infusionsoft system or my email marketing system, and then I'll add them to the newsletter because that's what they've expressly said to do. And the people that have said no, well, I make sure that they're on the suppression list so they don't get emailed. But everybody gets a personal reply from me with what I've promised them.
Yeah, really great. That makes sense. And I think that's quite important what you said. People, when they spend some time listening to you, they deserve a couple of minutes of your time, and I think that's quite important. I think that's really good. And how did you find your personal assistant? Was there did you just jump on Upwork or something like that and put up a contract and hope for the best?
Yeah, I did. It was called Odesk back then, before Odesk and whatever the other one was, Elance, merged to become Upwork. It was Odesk. It was probably 7 or 8 years ago. One of our mentors he put us onto the idea of virtual assistants way back in the early days. And he said, check out this site called Odesk. You can get people who are bright, people who are hardworking, people who are all over the world. And because some of them are in developing nations, some of them are also very cheap. And we actually found one of our virtual assistants, Abby, and she's been doing work with us since the start. So yeah, we put up a contract on Odesk, Upwork, and found somebody, and we've hung on to her. And she works for other people, of course, but she's there when we activate her contract. We send her work, and then she does it reliably. So it's really nice.
Very cool, very cool. So Adam, was that before social media came into the world or after?
Well, it was about the same time. It would have been back in 2006, I think. About the same time.
Awesome. Look, where does your journey take you now? Like, where, I know you do speaking, you're still involved with Blue Mile Media. What's your next step? Like, what's your vision, and where's it all going?
Okay, Sebastian, for me, my passion and focus at the moment is taking a lot of the stuff that I've learnt, taking the IP that I share privately with clients and workshop attendees and conference attendees, and packaging that up into online courses. So it's good to have a room full of people you can talk to and work with, and it's nice to work one-on-one with clients. But as you know, when you were living in Switzerland or Germany, it's a long way to travel for a workshop or a session together. And yes, we can do it over Skype or Zoom. That works too. But there's a lot of people that want to go at their own pace. And there's a lot of stuff that we've learned that I feel can be valuable to the 30-odd thousand people that subscribe to our Blue Wire news. So I'm in the process, and we've been doing online courses for years, but I'm very passionate about getting all the stuff that we've learned from our early days as an agency, the hiring and firing sort of processes, the public speaking stuff that we've learned. There's so many courses and so much material in my head and on our server that my goal for the next 12 months is to package those all up as courses and get that out into the world and share what we've learned. So that's my focus. The speaking stuff is nice to do. The fact is, it means you get good travel. In fact, I'm heading off to Barcelona for a 3-week speaking engagement for the summer, for the European summer. So I'm really looking forward to that. And so the speaking and the online courses are the two things that I love and that I'll continue to stay focused on.
That's fabulous. And that's what I recommend to my clients usually as well, if you can, to package your property up in online courses. And it's fairly easy these days actually to create them, like from a technical point of view, like a simple version of them. But it sounds to me like a lot of well, we just said it, legwork, writing up things, recording videos, things like that. Is that kind of what you mainly do at the moment? If you set up a studio or something like that?
Yeah, that's the plan. Like, I did have a videographer when I was down in Sydney, and some of the new courses are going to be more slide based. Some will be talking to camera like we're doing now. But yeah, look, it's preparing the slides, it's preparing the material, it's structuring it all out. But what I do like to do, rather than create a course and just cross your fingers people buy it, I like to do a bit of a staggered approach, and I'll basically outline what I'm thinking. I'll send that off to my email subscribers, and they've already done surveys and let me know what they're interested in. But I'll say, look, if you want to be part of the pilot group, the pilot class for this, I'm taking, say, 20 odd people. They'll get a special price. They buy it, and then we start, say, week 1, and we do a live Zoom call like this, but there's lots of people on it. I share my knowledge, and we record it, and we go through the material, and they provide feedback. And at the end of the course, if they've seen results, then they give me testimonials and everything else. So it's kind of like a beta version of the course. And then if that goes well, then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll shoot it properly, and I'll record it into short, sharp little videos, and I'll publish I'll launch a sort of polished version of the product. So that's the process I go through. I've made the mistake before in the early days of spending all this time and money putting together an online course that nobody bought. So I've done all the classic mistakes. So now pre-sell it, get some interest, get some buyers, and then build it from there, which I'm sure you do too, Sebastian. But I've learned the lessons the hard way, but it does take a bit of preparation.
Yeah. Well, and it takes courage. For me, like, and I hear it from many of my clients as well. It takes a lot of courage to sell something, and that but that you don't exactly know how it's gonna happen, right? So you may have outlined it, but to actually just run a Zoom call, and you just trust that they like what you're gonna say then, and that the next one as well, and then you may even adapt in between. That feels very uncertain for people. That's a difficult step.
It is. Yeah, there's a lot of self-doubt. There's a lot of nervousness. There's a lot of sort of fear, especially once you put it out, you put the offer out there on an email, and then you're waiting for that first sale to come in. That's incredibly nerve-wracking. And then there's also, of course, courses that fail. Either you didn't sell it properly, either you didn't do your research properly. I mean, you put all that effort and time into something that maybe one person or nobody buys, it's very disheartening. But you've got to remember, it happens to nearly everybody. No one gets it perfect the first go. In fact, most people have failed if you look at their early courses, if they tell you enough about it. So it takes a bit of that persistence as well to realize, hey, I've got something worth sharing. People have been prepared to buy it from me, in consulting or one-on-one, in a one-on-one capacity. So I've just got to take the time and work out how I can package it and sell it and everything else, and not give up. I see so many people give up too early, I think. Like, they've got great stuff. They might put a course together, try and sell it. They get no sales, and they go, no, this stuff doesn't work. It does. It's just like anything. It takes time to learn. You've got to go through that painful, you don't have to, but typically we go through that painful failure stage, and we sort of get better and better at it from there. So my advice is to get started, give it a go. Don't be discouraged if it doesn't go as well as planned, and follow in the footsteps of people that have done it before you. I wish I'd done that a little bit earlier. I kind of thought, no, we can do this on our own. And it was definitely early days. Like, there wasn't tons of people doing online courses back then. But we got it wrong, and looking back, we could have probably invested the money to learn from someone rather than going in gung-ho thinking we could do it ourselves, wasting more time and more money than if we paid somebody to help us.
Fair enough. So it sounds to me like you going to have an online course soon on how to create online courses.
Oh, look, I don't think I would go down that path. I know there's a lot of people that do. I would like, it's not on my short list of things to do yet. I think there's a lot of I tend to have partnerships with the people that I've learned from. And if I've learned how to do an online course, I'll just refer them straight to the source. You never know, but that could change. But I find a lot of the people that I'm teaching at this stage are high trust, relationship-based professionals. So many of our students are in the wellness industry. There's naturopaths and osteopaths and all sorts of health professionals and wellness professionals in there. At this stage, they're not looking to build their own courses. In my experience, they're looking to just use things like social media or their website to get more leads, to get more clients, to share what they know. And maybe online courses will come down the track for them, but a lot of the time they're earlier on in that journey. But you never know. You never know, Sebastian.
Absolutely, you never know. Look at them. Always at the end of the podcast, I always ask my interviewees to give their three best pieces of advice. And we talked quite a bit about social media. We talked about public speaking, and we talked about online courses today, which I thought this was invaluable advice and experience shared from you. So thank you so much for that. That was really incredible. Now, when it comes to these three tips, I'd really like you to maybe do one or two on speaking, because I actually haven't dug a little bit deeper on that topic. Even all three, if you can. But I really like to give a few things, like when it comes to public speaking, if I want to do this as a business owner, and even if it just be a workshop or something smaller to start off with, like where do I start? What should I not miss? And if that's not enough, go into social media or anything else you like.
Yeah, sure, Sebastian. So with public speaking, or I guess public speaking includes conferences or workshops, one of the things that I'm very glad that I did right from the very first speech, like as soon as I was accepted to speak at a conference, I didn't get paid because it was my first time, but I hired a speaking coach. And that made such a difference. Like, it wasn't cheap, but the stuff that we learnt from our coach was just invaluable. And so to be more specific, some of the things that my speaking coach taught me was to have slides with pictures as opposed to words. Because as a speaker, you're the star of the show, not the slides. Too many people put slides on, I put words, and they sort of look at the slides and read it off. And that's a very boring experience for the attendees. Other things he taught me was you're going to be nervous before you do your speech. So practice what he called in the minute or so before you go on, like do lots of deep breaths, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Or is it the other way around? In through one, out through the other.
Yeah, in through the nose.
In through the nose, out through the mouth. And do it really slowly, because it brings your heart rate down, because you're going to be naturally a little bit excited / nervous. And as well, he said, really know pretty much off by heart what you're going to say for the first 60 seconds and the last 60 seconds. Because for the first 60 seconds, you're going to be nervous. You can't really think about much more than that. So just know that first 60 seconds really well. And once you get through that, you'll be relieved and you'll just be able to flow naturally into other stuff. And also at the end of the presentation, it's important to close well, because so many people just finish with, have you got any questions? There's no questions, it's awkward, and then you kind of just walk off stage. It's a really bad way to finish. So my speaking coach said, have time for questions for sure, but then you finish the speech with your own closing statement. So you say, look, we've got time for questions now, and then I'll make my closing statements. And if nobody puts up their hand to ask a question, say, always have one up your sleeve. Say, a question I'm often asked is, well, how do you get started with your online marketing? And then you can answer that question, which gives the audience a time to think and catch up, and then typically you'll get more questions after that. But then always make sure you finish on time, or even a few minutes early, and then make your closing statement. And that should be 60 seconds that you've thought about and you know off by heart, so you can just rattle that off and have the call to action to send you an email or reiterate the key points from the speech. So look, there's some of the things that I had never known that I learned from my speaking coach. It's funny watching my early presentations again, and how nervous I was, and how, tight in the chest I was, and how I didn't move around the stage, and I was like tied to the lectern. And that was with so much practice and preparation and a professional coach. So always remember that if you're starting out with, podcasts, like some of your listeners might be thinking of doing, speaking, videos, always remember to go back to people's early stuff and see how bad they were and see how much they've improved, because it can be, it can feel like you're so far behind other people when you're just starting out. So you're not, you're just at the same stage everybody was. Be persistent and persevere. And if you really want to be doing it, as I said, like speaking can be, it's a lot of work to prepare a good speech. It's a lot of practice. A lot of speakers don't get paid. So you've really got to be clear as to why you're doing it. Oftentimes you can win lots of business from it. Oftentimes you can get to the professional level where you do get paid for doing it. But if it's just because you think you should, it's going to be a long, painful sort of struggle. But it can be also really rewarding if you know why you're doing it. So there's a couple of tips on the speaking side of things there, Sebastian.
Perfect. Love it. And I actually learned a few new things as well. Especially the closing statement. Like, I know I have exactly that problem when I go on and do my workshops, or I just recently had like a 10-minute presentation in front of a small audience, and really having this entry down pat, which I did, it worked really well. But then at the end, you come again into this point where you're starting to struggle a little bit and you feel a bit awkward and you don't really know what to do. And I think that's such a great advice to have, not just the first, but also the last bit ready to go. And I think, as you said, that in between, if you know your stuff, which you usually do when you speak about something that in regards to yourself, then you're quite good at that. And you just need to get into this flow. And once you're there, it's just fun. So
it is. And sorry to cut you off there, Sebastian, but the speaking coach said the reason you need a good close is because that's what people remember. So the first 60 seconds is important because that's their opportunity. That's where they're deciding, am I going to listen to this person? And then at the end, that's what they remember. So once you leave the stage and they go home, they remember what you said in that last 60 seconds. So that's why it's got to count.
Isn't it incredible? You do all this work for like 20 minutes or 40 minutes an hour, and it's just for preparing then to remember 60 seconds. Very good. Well, Adam, thank you so much for joining me today here and sharing this great advice with the audience. And I hope everyone will check out, and I'm sure people will check out what Adam has on his website, which will be all in the show notes as well as the social media links. But just thank you, Adam.
Okay, it's a pleasure, Sebastian. And for the people listening to the podcast that don't, for some reason, make it to the show notes, the web address is www.bluewiremedia.com.au. So that's my funny Australian accent, BLUEWIREMEDIA.com.au. So my templates that Sebastian's talked about are on the homepage there. Just pop your email address in and I'll send them to you. Alternatively, look me up on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever else I share on my templates very freely on social media platforms as well. But thanks for tuning in, and thanks for having me, Sebastian.
You're very welcome. Very welcome. Thank you, Adam.
If you would like to find out more about what Adam does, head to www.adamfranklin.com.au. The link for Adam's website, Blue Wire Media, and his social links are all in the show notes, so check them out. Don't forget to subscribe to the Influential Wellnesspreneur podcast so you don't miss an episode, and get involved in our social community. We look forward to seeing you next week when we interview our next inspiring wellnesspreneur. Until then, have fun.